Hey, all right. Good morning, everybody. It's Mike Morowski with Multifamily Unplugged this morning. It's Saturday morning. You know, I always say go wake somebody up, stick a cup of coffee in their hand, make them breakfast in bed, but plug in and listen. Man, we are in for a treat today. There's no doubt about that. Before I introduce our guest, though, and bring our guest on, what I want to know from you is what's your intention today? What are you planning to do? You know, before the show, my guest asked me, he goes, "Hey, what are you up to the rest of the day?" He really didn't ask what my intention was, but that was really kind of what he was alluding to, I think. So, you know, I just shared that with him, what I had planned for the rest of the day. It's kind of a busy Saturday, but we're here today to bring some relevant content for you. So please, if you like what we do, go out Facebook, LinkedIn, like us, love us, subscribe on YouTube to this channel so that you get notified every time that we are going live on Saturday morning. We look forward to helping your real estate business grow and helping it move along for you. So let me introduce our guest. I am joined this morning by Justin Moy from Scottsdale, Arizona. Justin is a real estate investor, been in the multifamily space for about 2 years, started out in real estate sales, about 3 years of experience in that. But here's the interesting thing. What we're going to talk about is how to start from zero and scale to wherever you get to today, right? So what's interesting and why I connected with Justin, I think our stories were so aligned and so similar alike. You know, came from the real estate space, went into multifamily, didn't know anything about the transition, went right into multifamily and had to start learning along the way and scaling a business. So we're going to talk about those techniques in that. Let me bring Justin in. Hey, Justin, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Mike, and good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us on a Saturday morning here.
Certainly good to see you. What's the weather like in Scottsdale today, or do I even dare to ask?
Well, my heater hasn't gone on in a couple weeks. It's 52 right now and sunny. It's going to get up to about 65. So we're liking life out here.
Yeah. I like that when you say that my heater hasn't gone on in 2 weeks. I got a daughter who lives in West Texas, and she called the other day. She goes, "Dad, I had to turn my heater on." I said, "I'll be quiet. You move."
Yeah, I'm in Chicago. Well, we invest in Kansas City, and we haven't been able to go to our properties here in about a week or two. Some flights got canceled because there's just crazy storms there. So yeah, I know the rest of the country's going through it, but not here in Scottsdale.
Yeah, pretty interesting. I know I'm supposed to go down to Miami because we got a heavy load in Miami, or not Miami, but Tampa. And,
Yep.
I'm glad we weren't going this week, right? Because of the flights and that. So anyhow,
it's brutal.
So listen, fill in some blanks. I told a little bit about you, but, jump in and tell us who you are, what you were up to, and, how you wound up in this crazy space.
Yeah, that'd be great. So my background is very real estate intensive, and that stems from essentially me hating formal education. When I was in high school, I was that person who grit my teeth every day going to class. I really couldn't stand it. Really was looking for what couldn't wait till I graduated so I could be done with formal schooling. So when I graduated, and a lot of jobs that I wanted to do, you needed a degree. You needed a 4-year degree. I really liked marketing. I really liked design. I really liked PR, all those types of things. And so my parents told me, well, you're not ever going to make a lot of money unless you get a degree, because that's kind of the life that they grew up in. So my mom said, please, just for us, at least go to a year of junior college. Just give it a chance while you find something you want to do. And I said, fine, I'll go to junior college. Did a year there. And whole time I was looking for any kind of way that I could make some really great money without having that degree. And so my sister's boyfriend at the time said, well, I sell cars and I make pretty good money and I don't have a degree. So looking at something sales related. And so real estate and insurance were the two things that I was looking at. Now, in real estate, at the time I was living in the East Bay of California, which is just east of the San Francisco Bay Area. And I decided to get my real estate license because I really, really love a challenge. And in the East Bay of California at the time, and I'm sure it's still up there, but it was the 4th most competitive market in the country. It was like San Francisco, LA, New York, then the East Bay. So I got my real estate license. And as I love challenges and I like to do a lot of things. After about a year doing that, I was making great money. I decided it was time for me to take on another challenge. And then I actually joined the military. I joined the Marine Corps kind of on a whim. That's kind of how I was at the time. So joined the Marine Corps, did that, was there for about 6 years, came back, sold more real estate, picked up right where I left off. I was rookie of the year. Me and my team were constantly in the top 3 or 5 in production. I was here, in my first year, maybe 20 years old, selling $4, $5, $6 million homes, and really decided this is what I want to do. I want to sell real estate forever. It's just so lucrative, and I'm so good at it. And then, as curveballs come, I was sitting at home one day, again having this existential crisis of what do I want to do for the rest of my life, and I was watching college football, and it was an Oregon game. And I remember the camera panning through the crowd, and the student section was just going crazy. They were going ballistic. And at that very second, just like in 1 second, I decided to join the Marine Corps. In 1 second, I decided, okay, if I don't go to college now, I'll never get to go. And that's a regret that I'm going to have the rest of my life, I think. So that afternoon, I applied to about 6 or 7 colleges, got into the University of Arizona and a couple other ones, but I had a lot of friends who went there. And then the next year, I was in Tucson. I was in Tucson finishing my degree. That was about 3 years ago. And when I graduated, I knew I wanted to get back into real estate, this time as an investor, as an owner, because I wanted to stop being so transactional. I really wanted something that I could build and something that didn't hold me to one area. When you're in real estate sales, and Mike, I'm sure you kind of have to stay in the same neighborhood. Once you build your book of business there and your reputation, it's hard to get up and start over. Well, I didn't want that. And so investments was where I wanted to be at. And once I started hearing about multifamily, it was so obvious that was the course to take. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. That's why I love speaking about it. That's why even I have the podcast that I do, Building Passive Income and Wealth Through Real Estate, because it's all about building that wealth and building that legacy. And there's just not a lot of people that understand how it works. And that's really what I hope to change.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like I said, that's why you and I connected, I think, because, I was Remax Rookie of the Year. I sold real estate. I was knocking it out of the park, and I thought I was never going to go do anything else. And then all of a sudden the market started to soften. And I said, man, I got 7 people working for me. How am I going to keep this going? I don't want to have to lay anybody off. Let's do something a little different. Wound up in the multifamily space. So, hey, let me ask you this. For anybody who might be on, who's maybe a new real estate agent thinking about trying to grow their business this year in 2022, give a couple of techniques that helped you become, Rookie of the Year in the early days. What did you do fundamentally, consistently that helped you do that?
Yeah. So I was fortunate to be in a pretty big office, and it was a local office. They weren't a big Keller Williams or anything like that. But they were huge, the biggest one in the East Bay. And I had a lot of very, very ultra successful people there. Now, the East Bay of California, like I said, it was super, super competitive. And the reason being is there was actually a statistic that about 1 in every 7 people had their real estate license. So chances are, if you were prospecting, they're like, well, my brother has a real estate agent, my sister, my mother, my father. And that was really prominent. So what I did was I looked at the most successful people in my office, or you could do your whole franchise or whatever the case may be. And not that I'm holding this against anybody, but if they came from a real estate family, I took them off of my list of people who I wanted to meet with, because the conversations I would have with them were so different. They just said, hey, yeah, my dad is in it. Then when I graduated college, I became in it too. And now we have listings. And that just wasn't the life for me or any other new agent, like I'm sure you as well. So I picked the people who didn't come from a real estate background. I just say, what do you do? What should I do? If you could go back in time and build a portfolio or a business like you, what should it be? And I started writing down every single thing that they said. And the common denominators were, go to every open house you can, because chances are when you're new, you're not that busy anyways. So you've got weekends free. They said, go to every open house you can. And I said, but what are the chances that somebody's going to walk in there and buy the house that I'm doing the open house in? And they said, well, it's not about that. Don't worry about that. Chances are the home's already been sold by the time before the open house even happened. Your goal is just to meet the people that come in and take down their information, then follow up with them and see if there's another house that they want to buy. And I said, okay. So I write down open houses. And another person said, man, when I was your age, I would just cold call like hell. That's it. That's all I would do all day, every day until I got a listing. And I wouldn't stop until I got at least one person to say, sure, come by sometime this week. So it's okay. I wrote that down.
And there's people that say OG doesn't work, right? So
OG works.
Yeah, it works. It still works today. So
OG works. I think, the effectiveness is a little bit different. I think there's different ways you could leverage technology, and there's different ways to build relationships. And it's harder to build a business that way. Then there's other people that said all I did all day was call people that I knew. I just went through my phone and my Rolodex at the time. I just called people and just checked in all the time. I said, okay. Yeah. And I devised this list of things that I constantly heard. And then I decided, okay, well, I didn't have a big sphere of influence. So calling everybody in my Rolodex at the time probably wasn't going to be very helpful to me, or all my friends just graduated high school, right? And their parents still saw me as their high school friend. And so that was kind of out. I said, okay, cold calling, I could do that. So let me move that into the next section of my list. Open houses, I could do that. Let me move that into the next section of my list. And then I really picked two things. For me, it was cold calling and open houses that I would just do all the time, every single day. There was not a weekend I did not do an open house. There was not a morning that I didn't start off with at least 2 to 4 hours of cold calling. It just wasn't. It just didn't exist to me.
Yeah, you have to master. You have to master the repetitious boredom. You have to do the same thing over and over and over. That's what helps you get
over. Yep. And it was very, expireds and FSBOs, for sale by owners. And then I would just pick a market. And I remember somebody told me, well, you want to pick a market that has a certain amount of turnover in terms of homes sales per year. I don't remember. I think it was 5%. And so I remember literally counting in a map on the MLS, zooming in and counting the houses. And I said, okay, 500 houses. Let me look at the sales in the past year. Okay, 8 sales. This qualifies. So I would take that map, give it to the title agency. Hey, can you get me a list? And I would just call like crazy. And it was a system and a process. And everybody told me it's going to feel like it's not working, but just trust me, it will. And it's going to feel like it's not. It's going to feel like you're wasting your time, and you're going to hate it probably until one day it just will. And so you have to trust that process. And I did. And this is a great story from my real estate sales life that I tell every salesperson in every industry, because I'm so passionate about sales, something that I feel like I'm really good at. And it was because of this exact moment. I'm going to tell you, I was cold calling, and it was maybe about 2 or 3 months in, nothing was happening. Nothing at all. And at this point, I was, like I said, between 2 and 4 hours every single day cold calling. And I said, man, this is so foolish. Maybe cold calling is dead, right? Because that's kind of a pitch that all salespeople get. Cold calling is dead. Use our program. And I said, maybe cold calling is dead. And I'm sitting there in my office, and I'm so frustrated. And it's like 11:50, and I usually stopped by noon. And I'm there, and I'm thinking, what else am I going to do? How else am I going to replace my mornings? Fine. Let me just look if any new FSBOs came on market on Craigslist. I would look since this morning. And I looked, and this one came up in the city called Pleasanton, California. And I'm sitting there, phone is in my hand, headset is on, and it's just the battle of the two wolves inside, right? Just go home. What's the point? You've called 1,000 FSBOs. You've never gotten anything. And the other one just said, forget it. It's just one. Is that going to kill you? It's just one more. I said, fine. Thankfully, that wolf won. I call it. I call the lady. I honestly don't remember what I said. I think I was kind of over it too. I was like, hey, is this, Katie? Hey, my name's Justin, J. Rockcliffe Realtors. And I just kind of went into my script, kind of half-assed, honestly, because I was kind of dead at the time. And I said, if I could, and I don't know if I can, but if I could sell your home and net you more than you would on your own and do all the work for you, would you be open to having that conversation? And then she paused for a little bit, and she goes, well, sure, why not? And I almost didn't believe it. I almost thought, like, was this a test, or was this somebody in my office messing with me? Because it was the last call I was ever going to make as a cold caller, as a real estate agent. It was the last one. And I oh my God, I had a mentor at the time. And I said, hey, I think I have a listing appointment. And I told him how the conversation went. He goes, yeah, that's a listing appointment. When is it? We got to go to that. Went there, listed the home for about $980,000. It sold for like $1.3 million. And then before, about a week or two after we signed her contract to sell the home, she calls me. She says, hey, I have a home that I want to buy. It's about $3 million. Can you help me with that too? I said, yes, I can. So that last call, was about $4.5 million in transactions for me all at once. They closed on the same day, both homes. So from that day forward, I told myself I'm not ever going to doubt the process that mentors tell me again, not ever in my life. And that's really shaped my career in real estate and really in life and everything. And so that's definitely the biggest advice I would have is always, always, always trust that process.
Nice. There was a lot there, and I would suggest to anybody to go back and listen to that. But the key things I picked up was prospect, right? And make that extra call at the end of the day. But I love to teach agents how to prospect. I love to teach scripts and dialogues. I've done it for so long. They're innate. They're part of me, right? The DNA. I teach 6 questions where you could use them anytime, right? You could be standing in the grocery store or sitting next to somebody in a restaurant and hear them talking about real estate and say, "Oh, do you plan on moving?" So I mean, you can just start a conversation, right? But here's what's funny is I was just telling somebody the other day that I said I was a listing agent. I loved being a listing agent because you could carry 25, 30 listings. Take the weekend off, come in on Monday, you'd have 5 or 6 appointments or 5 or 6 contracts to negotiate. And people would be, "Where were you all weekend?" I said, "Did you listen to my voicemail? I don't work on the weekend." So, that was the advantage of doing that. So it's funny. So here's what I want to know now is how do we go from this great real estate business to multifamily? What was your trip? Why'd you transition? What was that all about?
Yep. So kind of in line with listening to your mentors and really taking what they say to heart is after a couple of transactions all over the valley, what we call the East Bay, the valley, and somewhere in Livermore, a city called Pleasanton and San Ramon, my mentor said, "Hey, you should pick a niche of some kind, whether it's a geographical niche or whether it's a type of property you sell. It's going to make your life easier. It's going to make marketing easier. And people are going to start identifying you as that. And it's going to be a no-brainer for them to list with you if they have that type of property than somebody else." And again, like the kid that I was, I kind of fought him on it. Well, if I pick a niche, what about people that are outside the niche? He said, "Trust me, that don't worry about that. Just pick a niche and go with it." And I said, "Well, what's your niche?" And he said, "I do absentee owners." And well, what's that? He said, "Well, it's people who have investment properties. So typically they don't live there. There's typically a tenant there, and they're usually investors. And the reason why I like working with them," and this is him talking, so the reason why I like working with them is because it's mostly a numbers thing. Once they hit a certain amount of return, or if I say, "Hey, can I see if I can sell your home for this amount of dollars?" Because it's an investment to them, they're usually open to it. So I said, "Sure, that sounds a little bit interesting to me, and I'm interested in the numbers of real estate, the investments of it." So I started listing and selling investment homes and helping them buy new investment homes. And when we would prepare their pro formas and their income statements, I would say, "Man, this person's making good money off of not doing much. I'm the one out here doing all the work. I'm transactional. I'm hustling for the next deal and I'm getting paid well, but this person's getting paid and they're not working at all. They're signing the contract, they're putting up the money, and then they have somebody else manage it." And so I said, wow, that's eventually what I want to do. And my goal, which is a very popular goal I hear all the time on my podcast as well, is I started out with the goal of, well, I'm going to start just buying one single family home a year. And then within, 20, 30 years, I'm going to have this great portfolio and I'll retire. I said, that sounds like a really great idea. So I reached out to a couple of my investor clients and I said, "Hey, can you kind of walk me through what you do? I want to start buying a couple of these homes." And they said, "Yeah, I mean, once all is said and done and you put aside for reserves and you have the manager and you have this and that and you pay the insurance and, I walk away with maybe 100 or 200 bucks a month." And I thought 100 and 200 bucks a month, like that doesn't really sound great at all. So I called the next one and I got a similar answer. And the next one got a similar answer. And I just thought, well, what does that even mean? I mean, you need to have a serious amount of these to make any kind of difference in your life. And then as I started to have that mindset, I started to get really shocked because I thought, man, my whole plan is kind of crumbling. It no longer excited me to do that. I didn't want to buy a property and plan on making 100 to 200 bucks a month. That just didn't seem right to me. And so I started looking for other things to invest in. And of course, multifamily was sitting on my desk for a while. There was this book. And like everybody in this space, I thought, I'm not big enough to do multifamily. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough connections. I just can't do that.
What was the book?
It was Michael Blanc's. I don't remember what it's called. Michael Blanc's book. And And then I got into his rabbit hole of the podcast and then his blogs and then his videos that he does. And I just thought, you know what? I was rookie of the year when I was 20 years old. My clients would invite me out for beers after closing, and I literally couldn't go. And there were people in my office, I was outpacing them by performance who had been literally generational real estate agents. And I said, there's really nothing stopping me from doing multifamily. I'm just going to give it a shot. You know, if other people can do it, I can do it. And I have this saying, and it's, I don't know if it's insulting or funny or how people take it, but I am who I am, and I talk the way I talk. The way it's is, I told this to my sister the other day, is because she's flipping houses now. And she says, I don't know if I can flip houses. And I sat her down and I said, Nani, there's a lot dumber people who flip houses than you, and they're very, very successful. So, you know, take that however you will, but I just had the same thought. You know, there's got to be other people in there who are not as driven, not as motivated, not as willing to do all the work that I am, who are successful in the space. So I jumped in with both feet. That was about 2 years ago, and I just haven't looked back.
So let's talk about that first deal. What was that first deal
Yeah.
like for you, and how did that go?
Yeah, it was a lot of fake it till you make it. And thankfully, I had great partners in the space. Multifamily is a little bit different than the single family in a lot of aspects. You know, I had that broker background, and I've always been really good at sales and communicating with people. So I was networking with a lot of brokers, ton of brokers all the time, having phone calls with them and meeting with them whenever I could. And finally got an opportunity. Somebody just said, hey, I have this distress listing. It's pretty much an empty building. The owner now bought it, tried to flip it, ran out of money, and now wants to get out of it. Do you want to buy it? And I said, well, that sounds like actually the perfect deal for us. So I found the first thing I had to do was find the right partner for that property. When you're brand new in the space, and I've never flipped homes before, I was never a contractor before, I've never done any of those things. I'm not even a handsy guy. I don't even know how to fix things around the house. It would have been probably too risky for me to take on by myself. And it's remote. I live out here in Scottsdale. This is out in St. Louis County. And so the numbers worked out really, really, really well. But multifamily is both art and science. You have to have the experience. You have to have somebody on your team who can do those things. And so I reached out to somebody I had met at a conference who actually builds apartments and huge construction background. And I said, hey, I think I found a really good deal. Do you want to partner with me and look at this thing with me? And I told him the background. He said, yeah, that sounds like exactly what we do. No problem. Flew out there, toured the property. And I knew I had the partner right away because, well, he builds apartments. So he knew every single thing that needed to be done in this apartment. What kind of flooring, what kind of roofing, what kind of mansard, everything. And so he said, yep, we can do this. And I know exactly how much it'll cost. It'll cost this much. And then we're going to buy it for this much. And then it'll get appraised at this much. I said, perfect. And that was our first transaction. And that's been an amazing ride. You learn a ton on your first one. And a lot of people say it, and I don't know if your guests have heard it, but yeah, it's that first deal. You're really, really, really chasing for that first deal. Once you get it, things really start to kick off. You learn a lot more than you ever could have from all the books and all the podcasts and all the videos, everything. This industry is so much about learning from doing, and there's so much information out there. A lot of people just don't do. They learn forever. There's people who I met when I first started in this business who are still saying that they're learning. You know, I don't know what that means anymore. You got to go out there and you got to start buying some transactions.
Well, I take that two ways, right? I've been in the business 30 years. I've done thousands of units and thousands of transactions, but I'm still learning because I learned from you, right? I mean, you've only been in the business a couple years, but you come to the table with a new energy, a new life, new ideas, new techniques, technology changes. So I am still learning. I actually interviewed a woman one day in another industry, and she said to me, the reason I like multifamily people so much is because they always are learning.
Yep. And that, yes, you have to, absolutely. And when I say that they're still learning, I mean, like, they're still in that phase where that's all they're doing.
Yeah.
I
then
mean,
there's the analysis.
learning is different. Exactly. Right. And this industry is very good at that. The multifamily industry, it's so intimidating. And even me with some type of real estate background, it was super intimidating. And so you definitely can get that now. Well, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to call a broker yet. Let me keep listening to podcasts. So let me keep reading books about it. You have to eventually pick up the phone, or you have to eventually start talking to investors. You have to do these things. So you got to exit that purely learning phase and then just take some action.
So here's a couple quick questions. So how many units in that first deal? It
was 40, and then plus an office, and we're going to make it 41.
Okay. All right. So how about how'd you underwrite that first deal? How did you know
Yeah.
what to do? What'd you look at?
Yeah, it it was actually a little bit easier to underwrite because it was almost vacant. I think there were like 4 or 5 tenants in the thing. And so I wasn't analyzing their current rents. We were pretty much just going based on the pro forma. And so I reached out to multiple property managers in the area. I told them about the building. I said, hey, what do you think we can get for this? Everything's going to be brand new. I mean, it's to the studs in every unit. And we're going to put in the best finishes. We're going to put in a gate. I came to them with a plan, which is really important. And I said, this is what we're going to do. What do you think our pro forma rents would be? And I got a range of figures between maybe 575 and 650. And because it was my first deal, I took the lowest. I said 575 is our pro forma across the 41 units. And then I went to the construction guy, my partner, and said, how long do you think it'll take for us to fill this thing? And I said, yeah, I would just budget a whole year. I don't think it'll take that long, but just budget a year for it. Okay, great. And then we pulled in our financing and said, okay, well, we're going to borrow, the cost plus the carry cost. We were raising the money, so we did syndicate it. So we raised the reserves for the first year of essentially no income as well. And then, with the way the underwriting models are now with their conditional formatting, once you see everything turn green, it's time to go. It's time to get going on it.
So you raised the money. Did you have to raise the money for the whole deal, or did you put hard money on it? Because you can't get bank financing. You only got 4 people living there.
Yeah. Well, you have to get a bridge loan for something like that.
Okay.
So it was actually a little bit tougher than it should have been because of the size. Now, typically a bridge loan, if anybody doesn't know it, that's going to bridge you to conventional financing. So most in multifamily are going to be Freddie or Fannie financing, but yeah, like you said, they won't touch that at all. And so if it's a distressed property, you're going to get a bridge loan, and it's going to be interest only for 2 to 3 years. But then at that 2 to 3 year mark, when the loan is up, you got a balloon payment. So it's time to refinance or to sell it. And so because of the size of the property, we ended up buying it for about $1 million. A lot of bridge loans like to start at 5. So we were a little limited in the kind of financing we would get. I would say if now, I don't know if we would buy something that small that's distressed, because the financing is just so tough to get. And it's honestly really irritating to get. They're really, really picky. They're really, really strict on the requirements for it. But yeah, we raised the money needed for the down payment. And then also we borrowed. The thing about bridge loans is you could borrow capital expenses as well. So that's why we went with the 2.
Interesting. So how long did it take you to put permanent debt on it?
So it's about 8 months.
Wow.
8 months.
Okay. So you guys moved through that pretty quick.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So this is probably your partner who had the experience in the development side of it was able to execute, because I find a lot of times in the multifamily space, it's the execution, right? You can have a great plan written out on paper, but if it's not executed properly, it makes it a nightmare.
Yeah, it is. And the thing that's tough about that too is anybody who is looking to get into that multifamily space, there's so many books and podcasts and resources about getting that first deal. And there's so many gurus and coaching programs and mentorship programs and groups of people looking to get that first deal. But after that, you're almost on your own. There's not a whole lot of resources about, okay, well, now what? How do you manage it? How do you underwrite these different scenarios? Or how do you navigate financing? That's why it's so important to just go through the motions. Once you do one transaction, I mean, you're going to understand how the rest are going to happen. There's not that many books or resources to walk you through those processes. So that's why, like I said before, too, taking that action is so important. You got to get it done, and so you can learn more as well.
I like what you said about that's where the magic is, because I agree with that too. That really is where the magic's at, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So are you still raising capital today? Are you still doing deals? Where are you at? What's your business look like today?
Yeah. We're raising capital all the time. We have a couple of properties either under contract or in the pipe that we feel really strong we're going to get. And so again, having strong partners has been really important. So we are raising right now about $6 million for 3 properties. All throughout Kansas or Missouri. And there's one possibly in Oklahoma that will come through as well. And so I spend a lot of my time networking with brokers, underwriting properties, producing content like yours to bring on and educate new investors, and then do continued marketing for our firm. So yeah, we're staying really active, and we're still buying multifamily always.
So tell me why you like that Midwest market, that Kansas City, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
What do you see there that, um, you know, like we have a difference of opinion on the market, right? And
Mhm.
different marketplaces. So why do you like that market for you?
Yeah, it started off with Kansas City for me, and I think anybody who looks at the employment and the population metrics of Kansas City, you're going to see Phoenix 10 years ago.
Hmm.
The growth is so steady, so consistent, and the population is so big, especially for kind of out in that Midwest area, that it's going to be a hot market. It's going to be booming. And one thing again, so with business mentors that I've had in the past, one of the things that's always stuck with me is, hey, when your competition zigs, you want to zag.
Right.
So everybody right now is in Phoenix. Everybody right now is in Texas. Everybody right now is in Las Vegas. To look for deals here, and I live here in Scottsdale, it's brutal. It is absolutely brutal. You're going against a lot of really huge names who've been investing in Phoenix since before Phoenix was even really a big city. And so I'm not saying it's impossible. I've never been the type to limit myself or put limiting beliefs on somebody else. But if you can find another great market and have a little bit less resistance, especially to start out in the business, you're going to have a lot easier time. And so I looked at the metrics. We really loved the city of Kansas City and all the growth that it had, especially with the type of jobs there is. They're actually getting about a $2 billion airport extension, which is also a really good sign that city or that area is growing as well. And they just keep adding jobs. Every time you look at the employment, they just keep adding them. So we really like that market.
Yeah. So tell people why adding jobs. So obviously you're looking at the metrics up front and you have to check the boxes before you go somewhere: population growth, job growth, household income, right?
Yep.
Tell people why that's important.
Yeah, well, you want to make sure that in 10 years your investment's still going to be worth something.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at secondary or tertiary markets, it's totally okay, but you want to make sure that there's something feeding that market that's not going to go away. So the very, very, very first deal I ever looked at in multifamily that actually looked good on the numbers was not in Kansas City. It was in a city called Charleston, Missouri. Now, Charleston, Missouri is about 3 hours south of St. Louis. And I took it to my mentor and I said, hey, what do you think about this? It's a small market, never heard of the city. And he said, well, that can be good because he has properties in small markets. And he said, those are usually the best performing ones because there's not a lot of competition. So let's just look at it. And we really dove into the city. And the only real job there was a prison. That's it. And then there's a couple of retail stores and stuff like that. And I think there was a Home Depot. But if that prison's gone, then it's gone. That's absolutely it. Now, on one hand, unfortunately, in this country, prisons aren't going away, and they
They
are
should all
growing.
be gone.
They, yeah, yeah, that's right. Yep, yep. Well, they're not, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But so that's on one hand is, well, prisons aren't going away; those are still government jobs. But I just didn't feel enough confidence in that market. I wouldn't be able to sleep well at night thinking, well, what's going on with that prison? Do I need to be watching prison news networks and what's going on with these? And so I wasn't comfortable there. But when you look at the most important for me is going to be that job growth. Anybody who doesn't know how to analyze the metrics of job or population growth, because those things you would think kind of go hand in hand, they don't always. Job growth is going to be a lot more of a secure number for you. Reason being is that jobs are reported to the IRS and the actual government keeps track of those jobs so that they can tax you appropriately. They can tax those companies appropriately. Population growth a lot of times is an estimate based on the county or the city. And a lot of times they use statistical modeling for that as well. So the job growth is going to be more accurate than the population. So that's why that's our number one metric. And then they will typically go hand in hand. But if we're torn between the two metrics, job growth will win every time.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that I can execute my business plan, right? So if I'm going to raise my rents $200 a unit, does the income in the market substantiate the ability to do that? So that's, where's my tenant base going to come from, right? And that's the thing people need to look at as a multifamily investor is how to, we can have this great plan on paper, right? But how do we execute it? Executing it is so critical, and the metrics have to be there. The fundamentals have to be there in the marketplace. So, and it sounds like you look at that. So,
And what you said too was, Multifamily, I say this a lot, it's art and science. It's not just the spreadsheets, because the spreadsheets can look good. You can make them look good no matter what. You could make a couple alterations and the spreadsheet will look great. The returns will look great. But it's the art of, well, what's the story of this community? Who's going to live here? Why do they live here? Where will they be commuting? Why will they stay? Or will we have really high turnover? So that's the art part of it as well. That you need different mindsets and you need different viewpoints to really make great investment decisions here.
Hey, maybe we should start a new hashtag or an NFT or something and say multifamily, an art and a science, because I love that.
Art
I think
and a science. Yep. Hey, it is. We should be in the NFT space as well.
it's like Trump wrote that book years ago called The Art of the Deal. And when I read that, I was like, man, that's what I want to do. I just want to negotiate deals, right? Because that's what really gets your blood flowing, especially in this space, right? I'm in the middle, kind of sort of in the middle of negotiating a deal right now, a small one. I have a couple models that I work, but, and I'm going back and forth. And the seller came back with something yesterday and I thought, maybe I should go back. You know what? Let's just sit. And see what happens. So, sometimes that's what it is, right? That's that science part, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I remember the first time I had sent a counter offer to a seller's counter, I was physically sweating. It's nerve wracking. It is because your worst fear, and this was like my first transaction, right? Of course, after that it's fine, but my worst fear is they were gonna flip me the bird and say, "Get the hell out of here, kid." And that doesn't happen. And everybody told me that your worst case scenario. I remember I was pacing around my home, rehearsing what I was going to say to this broker, rehearsing every scenario he could say. I would say this, he would say this, I would say this. And that's the sales guy in me, right? Is what's my script? What's my process for it? And then I called the guy, gave him the counter, and he just said, okay, let me talk to the seller, and hung up. Yeah. And then we came back and they accepted it. So yeah, it totally is that thrill as well. And it's always fun kind of playing these games too.
Yeah. I like what you said about not wanting to make that last phone call, and how all of a sudden your things changed. I can remember going on listing appointments, like, I'd been on a couple listing appointments through the day. I prospected all morning, and that last listing appointment, 7:00 at night, 6:00 at night, because I worked Monday through Thursday. I took the rest of the week, I took Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. But I can remember pulling in this driveway going, man, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. These people, the inside noise, right? The noise in your mind going, this isn't going to happen. They're not going to list with me, and go in and sit down at the table. And I signed the listing paperwork. I was out the door in 15 minutes. I was like, man, I could probably feel like that more often, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It is really true. It's the universe almost forces everybody to go through the same stuff, because all the mentors and the people before you and the people after you right now still in that situation. It's the same way. The second they're at that breaking point, the universe will reward you for just going one step further, just one more step. And I really am proof that happens, for honestly.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, do this. Tell people how they can grab your ebook, what that's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's called The Definitive Guide to Building Generational Wealth and Passive Cash Flow Through Multifamily Real Estate. You see at thedefinitiveguidebook.com. And it really is, like I said before, my goal is to educate so many people on this topic, because I think if every single person truly understood it and even understood the syndication model, there isn't a single person who wouldn't participate in some fashion, who wouldn't be a passive investor or some type of active investor. There's just nothing that would get in people's way. And so the ebook really talks about getting started, what it's about, what returns look like, how it compares to other investments. And if you actually go to my website as well, it's perpetualwealthcapital.com. You can find another ebook I wrote that is a case study of how $100,000 would return in the stock market versus in multifamily real estate as a passive investor. And it has real numbers from the 10 years prior to when I wrote the book, I think a year or two ago. And I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but, go on there, check it out. They're real numbers, real returns, real figures, with one of our deals versus one of our typical deals versus what the stock market's actually returned for its investors in the S&P 500. And there's just no way that I see in my mind people would choose what we call conventional investments in the stock market over some type of real estate investment. Then in the definitive guide, I also talk about why I chose multifamily over single family and short-term rentals as well. So tons of content. It's totally free. I encourage you to go on there and check it out.
Yeah, nice. And I'm glad you're here this morning. Any last, one thing I always want to know is any last tips or, points that you would leave a new investor, somebody just coming in the space, either something to look out for, encouragement, however you want to address that.
Yeah, I would say this. I'm going to end on a story. And I do apologize because it might be a little bit long-winded. I've actually never told this story before. It's a little bit personal, but I think it's really important. If you're an investor, you need to figure out why this is so important to you, because it's harder than an 8-to-5 job. It's harder than an 8-to-5 job. A lot of people say, well, you want to quit your 40-hour-a-week job so you can work 60 hours a week for yourself. But it's so worth it to me. And I'm going to tell you the story that really made it stick with me. So a couple of years ago, or maybe last year at this point, I had a relative who very, very old, and it was my grandmother, and she was passing away very suddenly. But she was very old, and we kind of expected it. And it was her last day, last day on this earth. And all of the family is around. They live in California. I'm in Phoenix. We have relatives in New York. Everybody's flying in because we kind of knew, like, hey, this is it. Grandma's about to pass away. And we're all huddled around her bed. And, the nurse is saying, yeah, probably in somebody in her condition, a couple of hours left, at least very, very latest to the end of the day, or maybe she might make it to tonight, but this is really it. And so the whole family's around the bed. We're all kind of talking to her. And because she was in some pain, she couldn't really talk back. So they had given her some different drugs so that she would be more comfortable passing. And so we're kind of having this one-way conversation with my grandma. And I have this relative, and honestly, I have a Chinese family. Chinese families are very big. I have a lot of cousins who I don't really know or haven't met that well. And somebody comes running into the door, and we've all been there for a couple hours. And she has a pharmacist jacket on. I remember, okay, that's my cousin. She's a pharmacist. And we say hi. She says hi to everybody who we haven't seen in a while. And, grandma's passing away, and we're all a little bit sad. And she kneels by our grandma's bed, and she grabs her hand and starts talking to her for a couple minutes. And after a couple minutes, her alarm goes off on her phone. And she gets up. She goes, okay, well, that's my lunch break, guys. I got to go. And she leaves. Oh. And I thought, okay, that's kind of weird. And in the moment, I didn't really think anything of it. And then within about an hour or two, my grandmother passed away. And, we're all sad. And we go home. We go our separate ways later that night. And I'm laying in bed. And I just thought to myself, it is so crazy how we knew that this would be our last few hours or minutes with this person on this earth. And somebody else's time is so controlled by a corporation, by a pharmacy, by a job, by something, that you were limited by what 1 hour long lunch break to drive to and from and visit with this relative who this is it. And I told myself from that day forward, that would not ever be me. I would not ever be constricted by somebody else's time. I would not ever let somebody tell me what I can or cannot do with my time, no matter what. I will work 1,000 hours a month for myself versus have a cushy job somewhere else where they control my time. So to me, that ignited a little bit of a different why for me. And so for you, I would encourage you to figure out what yours is and really put yourself in a position where when you do get that call and you do have a relative or somebody that needs something, you have the time freedom, because that's really what this is about. You have the time freedom to do what you want. And so my advice would be figure out what that is for you. Because once you really figure it out and that flip switches for you, this becomes the easiest thing in the world to do.
Becomes clarity, right? So we can have these goals, but unless we're crystal clear on what they mean, you really don't progress. Yeah. So good.
And the money will take you so far, right? The money, because the money's good, and the money will take you for a couple of years. But man, when I'm tired, I just think of that moment.
Yeah.
And it just reinvigorates me back, and I'm back in the game.
Yeah, nice story. Good for you. Good to hold on to that. All right, so let's lighten it up a little bit. Favorite tourist attraction you've ever been to?
The islands in Italy. They're not the Fiji Islands, but yeah, there's some islands off of the coast of Italy that are really, really, really nice. Crystal clear waters. Best trip I've ever had in my life. I love traveling, so Italy's my number one spot.
Is that the South Pacific?
It was south. Yeah, it was the southern area. Yep.
Oh,
I just blanking on what the islands were called, but yeah, really, really great place to be.
nice. How about favorite food, favorite restaurant?
Italian pizza in Italy.
No kidding.
Yeah, so in Italy, a lot of their restaurants are family owned, and a lot of times they actually have the garden where they pick all the tomatoes and everything on the roof of their restaurants.
Yeah.
And so it was really the best food I've ever had. Yep. A lot of these questions might be Italian for me.
I'm going now.
Yeah,
No doubt.
you got to
I
go.
always wanted to go, and that kind of pushed me over the edge. So, okay,
Yep.
great.
It's
Hey,
fantastic.
listen, thanks for being here this morning. I'm going to, why don't you tell people how they can get a hold of you and say goodbye. Spend a few minutes with me. I'll move you to the back room, say goodbye, and
Yeah.
then we'll chat out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for all the listeners, I really want to thank you for giving us a few minutes of your time. I know time is the most valuable thing we have. So it really is an honor and a huge compliment to both Mike and myself that you would choose to spend, a couple minutes with us. I hope I was able to provide some value. If you want to get a hold of me, Justin at perpetualwealthcapital.com is going to be the best way. I'm always checking that, always connecting with new people, no matter where you are in your journey. I'd love to talk, shoot the breeze with you about real estate, about life, anything. So Justin at perpetualwealthcapital.com. You could also go on my website, find contact forms and things like that, but that's going to be best.
Thanks, Justin. Hey, hang out in the back room with me for a minute, okay?
Yep. Thank you.
Hey, everybody, that's it for today. Boy, a lot of great things said, but here's what he said at the end, right? It's about networking. It's about building those relationships. And I just would encourage you to reach out to Justin, reach out to me. If we've never met, I'd love to meet and build a relationship and see where that would go, just personally or professionally, either way. So, hey, the other thing that we talked about today, he said, it's an art and a science, that multifamily is both an art and a science. And I thought that was great. It was just classic. But here's the big thing. If you look at the sign behind me, the sign behind me says, perseverance, right? That's what he portrayed, is that perseverance and how we have to continue after it, even when we don't feel like it. Deal with the basic fundamentals, develop the basic fundamentals, grow your business, whatever business you're in, whether you're on the real estate sales, multifamily side, or some other business, grow it, be perseverance, have tenacity, and grow from there. Everybody, we're here every week on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock Central. You can find us on Thursday morning live here as well. And if I can ever answer any questions or do anything, don't hesitate to reach out. That's Mike at mycoreintentions.com. Thanks. Look forward to seeing you all next week.